Hello and welcome. You're watching Good Morning India. I'm Gargi Rawat. Stay with us for all the news you need to start your day with. All opposition Rajya Sabha MPs will be protesting today. Also, the farmers could decide to call off their agitation today afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking. All Rajya Sabha MPs of opposition parties to join the Dharna, the Gandhi statue protesting the suspension of the 12 MPs today.
And repeal the suspension. We will win the battlefield. We will fight and we will win.
पार्लियामेंट में डिस्कशन चाहती है हम.
The Samyukt Kisan Morcha could take a final call to withdraw the agitation against the central government's 3 farm laws. A final decision likely in the afternoon. The Special Anti-Terror Court to decide on Sudha Bhardwaj's bail conditions today. The Supreme Court had rejected the NIA's plea against her bail yesterday. The RBI's Monetary Policy Committee will be presenting their 4th bi-monthly monetary policy today. Analysts believe, keeping implications of the new coronavirus variant Omicron in mind, lending rates likely to remain unchanged. Aditya Thackeray writes to the Union Health Minister with 3 suggestions to ensure better protection from the new COVID variant. Asked for lowering of the age of vaccinations and boosters for healthcare workers. And we'll get you all the latest on the big Bollywood wedding, the Katrina Vicky wedding, as the 3-day festivities have begun. Our top story, opposition MPs of the Rajya Sabha will join the sit-in protest in the Parliament complex today, ramping up the agitation against the suspension of 12 members of the upper house amid hectic consultations over a fresh offensive against the ruling government. Now the 12 MPs, 6 from the Congress, 2 each from the Trinamool Congress and Shiv Sena, and 1 each from the Communist Party of India and Communist Party of India Marxists, are holding an indefinite sit-in since they were suspended. It was on Monday last week that they were suspended for the remainder of the winter session for their unruly and violent behavior in the upper house during the monsoon session. Let's go across to Sunil Prabhu now for more. And Sunil, so now the opposition really coming together. Who are all opposition parties going to sit on this protest, and they're coming together to ramp up the agitation against the government and suspension of these 12 MPs?
That's right, Gargi. I think everybody, all opposition parties cutting across party lines despite the differences will show solidarity with those 12 members of parliament. I think that's become the new standoff. They believe what has taken place is unjust, is against the rule books. Whatever the argument, they say that you can't, suspend MPs for an act of something that has taken place in a different session. And unless the government and the opposition find some way in trying to resolve this issue, it's going to be another standoff in the Rajya Sabha. We are seeing the Lok Sabha function normally, discuss bills, as well as take up issues of public importance, and as well as deliberate on important matters. I think it's incumbent on both the opposition as well as the government to find a way out and resolve this crisis, because either way, what will happen is that the Rajya Sabha as well as Parliament will become a sad spectator to a standoff which will ensure no business is conducted.
Right, Sunil, and also taking place this morning will be Congress President Sonia Gandhi, who will be addressing the Congress Parliamentary Party meeting at the Central Hall of Parliament. That's at 9:30 this morning, and this is the first time it will be a physical meeting after a long time of the Congress Parliamentary Party.
That's right, Gargi. It's been a very, very long time that the Congress President will be addressing the Congress MPs in the Central Hall as part of the Congress Parliamentary Party meeting. This is a customary meeting that she usually does. She's been using the Zoom to speak to members of Parliament during the pandemic. On this occasion, she will be definitely taking the occasion not only to hit out at the government, but to explain to the party the steps that need to be taken, especially the party membership that is taking place, as well as internal elections, and get ready for the coming assembly elections, apart, as I said, from attacking the Narendra Modi government.
All right, Sunil, thanks so much for joining us there with all the latest. And the other big story today, the Samyukt Kisan Morcha could take a final call to withdraw the agitation against the central government's 3 farm laws. A final decision in this regard is likely today afternoon. Farmers have been protesting for more than 15 months on issues from the now scrapped farm laws to legal guarantee for the minimum support price. Sources said the centre has indicated it would offer a written assurance to meet their demands. A lengthy meeting of the farmer leaders from the Samyukt Kisan Morcha was held on Tuesday evening at the Shingu border protest site on the Delhi border. The meet to consider the centre's offer concluded without an agreement on how to proceed and will resume at 2 o'clock today, and it is expected that perhaps they will finally call off the agitation.
I can confirm that finally we have a written response and proposal from the Government of India, from Home Ministry, and we have had detailed discussion on this. The discussion remains inconclusive. We will resume at 2 o'clock tomorrow, and hopefully we would arrive at a constructive solution. And I'm sure we would be able to take a final view on this. But it's not just one issue, it's not merely ego. Something more and something substantive is at stake here.
Well, let's go across to Meher now for more. And Meher, there are indications that finally this agitation may be called off. There have been, deaths of farmers in the course of this agitation. One death took place even recently. Tell us more about, what happened in yesterday's meeting, and today's meeting is at around 2?
Yes, Karki, today's meeting is at around 2. The farmers' agitation has reached a sort of turning point, because the government yesterday came to them with a proposal accepting in part almost all of their remaining demands. Remember, when the farmers' laws were repealed, there were a few leftover demands that the government had not fulfilled, but now they've come forward and said we will actually come forward and accept in part a lot of them. But there are a few points of contention still. That's what was discussed in yesterday's meeting. There are 3 points of contention. So remember that there were 5 remaining demands on MSP guarantee, on compensation to farmers, especially those who died at Delhi's borders during the protest. There were also demands for consultations on a contentious electricity bill. They wanted no criminality or fines for stubble burning, and all cases that were filed against farmers who were protesting at the borders. He wanted all these cases to be retracted. So 3 are the main points of contention now. One is that the Committee on MSP should not include farmers who supported the laws. The Samyukt Kisan Morcha, which is the body of umbrella body of all the unions who are protesting at Delhi's borders, don't want any of the other farmers who were not protesting to be part of these laws. Remember, earlier on last year, there was a group of farmers who came out in support of the laws. So none of them, the SKM is asking, should be on this MSP committee. They also want clarity on compensation. The government has said that they will promise, they have promised compensation in principle, but they want specific compensation to the over 700 farmers who have died during the protest. And lastly, this is the main point of contention right now. The government wants farmers to leave the protest site before all the cases filed against them can be retracted. But the farmers say the cases should be retracted before they leave the site. So there's a kind of tug of war in that point right now. This is what they will try to reach a consensus on at today's meeting, which is at 2 p.m.
All right. Thanks so much, Meher, for joining us with those details. So that meeting, as Meher said, will be at 2 today. A special NIA court in Mumbai will decide today on the bail conditions for activist Sudha Bhardwaj, who has been in jail since August 2018 in connection with the Bhima Koregaon Elgar Parishad case. 60-year-old Bhardwaj was granted default bail by the Bombay High Court on the 1st of December based on a finding that the Additional Sessions Court Pune, which extended the time for investigation in the case beyond 90 days, was not competent to do so as it was not notified as a special court under Section 22 of the NI Act. The High Court had directed her to be produced before the trial court on December 8 to complete the bail formalities. Yesterday, the Supreme Court rejected the NIA's plea against bail being granted to Sudha Bhardwaj, clearing the way.
Well, after 3 years of incarceration, Sudha Bhardwaj will finally be granted bail. This after the Supreme Court refused to interfere with the Bombay High Court's order that gave her default bail. Now, why did the Bombay High Court give her default bail? Because her case had been decided by a court that was not competent to deal with the case, which had not been designated as a special NIA court under the NIA Act. So this is of course something that her lawyers argued in the Bombay High Court, which means that her case was not before the right court that extended her custody, and that's why she's been granted default bail by the Bombay High Court. The NIA went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court on Tuesday, yesterday, refused to interfere with the Bombay High Court's orders. The Bombay High Court had ordered that today Sudha Bhardwaj be produced before the trial court, the special NIA court, which will decide on the conditions of a bail. Now we expect these conditions to be decided at around noon because the court starts functioning only from 11 o'clock and then thereafter it'll take some time to process the orders. But yes, by evening we could see Sudha Bhardwaj walk out of the Baikala jail, which is of course where she's been housed. This is a women's jail. But also the others who had applied for default bail, their plea was turned down by the Bombay High Court. And this has been a case where there's been a lot of attention on questions over the evidence that's been produced by the NIA in this case, whether the evidence was planted according to forensic agencies that study material. And then of course there's the whole question of the application of UAPA on activists who work and may have taken a stance against the government. So all of these questions have been there around this case. Sudha Bhardwaj has spent more than 3 years in jail. She was arrested in August 2018, and of course finally after 3 years she will be walking out of jail, provided those bail orders that are likely to be announced, the conditions that are likely to be announced, and following which the order will be passed. Once that is processed, she will walk out of the Baikala jail. One expects the process to be completed by today, but like we've seen in other cases, sometimes that process can take time, and jail rules are very strict, so they function according to a time. So it could be today, but also it could spill over to tomorrow.
All right, Saurabh, well, thanks so much for joining us with those details. So Sudha Bhardwaj's bail conditions to be set today by the court. Well, let's move on now to latest on Omicron variant. And one of the first people to test positive for this new variant of coronavirus, Omicron, in the country was from Bengaluru. The patient was identified as a doctor and was due to be discharged on Monday evening, but will now continue to remain in hospital after his RT-PCR test confirmed positive for COVID again. My colleague Shrija reports.
In a major relief in Bengaluru, 5 COVID positive contacts of India's second Omicron patient do not have the highly infectious variant. However, the doctor himself has tested for COVID once again. The doctor, a resident of Bengaluru who tested positive for Omicron variant, was due to be discharged on Monday, but he tested positive again. What is worrying is that for about 5 days between November 27th and December 2nd, though the doctor continued to remain positive, he was discharged and was advised home isolation. However, he was readmitted on December 2nd after the genome sequencing results showed positive for Omicron variant. Soon after the doctor had tested positive for Omicron variant, a total of 13 primary and 205 secondary contacts who had come in contact were subjected to test. While 5 of the contacts tested positive for COVID, the test results of the rest were found to be negative for COVID-19 and were advised home isolation.
After I had all these symptoms, I isolated myself in the room. I didn't come in contact with any of our family members. So next day morning around 8 o'clock, I went to the hospital, get tested, both RAT and RT-PCR, both were positive.
One would expect as a doctor he would have been very cautious and he would have quarantined himself even after discharge. The reason I am saying that is, I think the whole world over we are all very clearly aware about its increased transmissibility, and more so considering that a genomic sequencing has been sent, which means doctor himself would be possibly aware that Omicron is high on the suspicion, and he would have possibly exercised due diligence in quarantining himself after discharge from the hospital and making sure that he is not come in contact.
So was there a botch-up in the containment of the Omicron variant?
Those were early days. I would put it this way, that if one is a contact of a Omicron, then yes, we should always keep them in institutional isolation till it is confirmed that it is not that variant and something else. Everywhere we cannot automatically say go and institutionally isolate because we really don't know the strain. All we've been requesting is that the genome sequencing labs give these results a bit early, maybe in 2-3 days. Till that time, at least we can monitor the home isolation and ensure these patients don't come out.
South Africa, being a high-risk country, was not declared, but in spite of that, he was kept in surveillance. 5 of the contacts have traced positive. So far, there is no indication that it is Omicron.
While the health department has dismissed the botch-up by the government as early days of Omicron variant, what we could heave a huge sigh of relief is that the results of the genome sequencing of those 5 COVID tested positive patients who had come in contact with the doctor have not shown any indication for the new variant. In Bengaluru, with camera person Kumar, this is Shrija for NDTV.
Now, Maharashtra has reported 10 cases of the Omicron variant, and the state is now putting in place systems to ensure that there are no further restrictions or shutdowns as a result of the emergence of this new variant. Now, Cabinet Minister Aditya Thackeray has written to the Union Health Minister with 3 suggestions to ensure protection. Saurabh Gupta reports.
So I've written to the Union Health Minister on 3 points. One is, of course, to reduce the minimum vaccination age to 15 from 18. This will help us better protect college-going students and 10th standard kids. The other thing is, of course, whoever feels safe in terms of frontline workers and healthcare workers to get the 3rd dose. And for Mumbai, if the gap between the 2 doses can be reduced to 4 weeks, it will be better because by 14th or 15th of Jan, we would have fully vaccinated the entire population.
A list of demands from Maharashtra, worst hit by COVID and now with the most number of Omicron cases. Reducing age for eligibility of vaccines, reducing gap between doses and a booster dose for frontline and healthcare workers is among the suggestions. The Indian Medical Association, in a note on the Omicron variant, says that children are getting infected in South Africa and ICU admissions are rising. Possibility of enhanced infection in the pediatric age group is inevitable, says the IMA. And it also asks the government to expedite vaccination of 12 to 18-year-old children to protect them. Doctors have said there's a shortage of kits which usually detect Omicron quickly before it's confirmed days later by genome sequencing.
अभी टेस्टिंग बहुत कम हो गया है. ओमाइक्रॉन का जो डायग्नोसिस है वो प्राइमरी डायग्नोसिस आरटीपीसीआर में ही होता है, लेकिन आरटीपीसीआर टेस्ट की जो टेस्टिंग की बहुत ही कमी है, क्योंकि जब लॉकडाउन कम होने के बाद, दूसरी लहर कम होने के बाद टेस्टिंग की जो फैसिलिटीज है वो काफ़ी जगह पर बहुत ही कम पाई जाती है. हॉस्पिटल के बेड्स जो है वो दूसरी लहर के तुलना में कम से कम 3 गुना तो बढ़ाने चाहिए.
On Monday evening, the Chief Minister met the state's COVID task force. Sources have told NDTV that the task force suggested delaying the reopening of schools for all grades. The task force has not yet recommended any more curbs, but it is monitoring the situation closely. The state wants to avoid closures and restrictions and is preparing for a surge in the number of patients. According to experts, the unvaccinated population, the below 18 age group, is most susceptible to the Omicron variant or any other wave or variant of the coronavirus, which is why there is a focus on bringing down the vaccination age and also including pediatric wards at the dedicated COVID hospitals. In Mumbai, with camera person Praveen G. Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Now, students are back on Karnataka campuses, but so is COVID, with clusters being reported from many educational institutions around the state on an almost daily basis. For now, though, authorities say the situation does not require a complete return to offline learning despite the clusters and the arrival of the variant.
COVID case numbers have been increasing in Karnataka once again, largely due to reports of clusters from educational institutions in the state, colleges and schools. There is a debate over whether it should be going back to online classes, although most do seem to prefer offline classes when it comes to education.
The new Omicron variant, confirmed in the state, is another factor. But offline classes and offline exams continue, at least for now.
If any of the cases have been reported, all measures will be taken to contain and to effectively tackle the situation. The regular classes will go on. Now, It is not the time to now look back. We'll see in future, depending on the situation.
There have been many concerns expressed on social media by students required to appear for offline exams, despite taking online classes for many months, particularly from those who have to travel for these exams. But many students taking offline classes say the advantages of this compared to online learning outweigh the current risks.
Bangalore cases are being rising nowadays. So we have to take more precautionary items than now.
Okay.
So it's preferably 50% offline or 50% online is good.
My family is a little bit concerned, of course, because it's a college area, and like my friend said that students, they will meet, right? We are young adults. We like to meet, we like to gather.
I'm concerned, but I prefer still offline classes because we can understand topics even better in offline, and we can use our practical labs and everything. We can't do that in online.
And despite the challenges involved in maintaining COVID protocol, faculty members do seem to hope offline classes can continue.
It's convenient and more effective to have offline classes. But looking at the type of variations that we are getting to see in the COVID cases and COVID virus, it could be of concern, but we are hopeful. This time people are more cautious about their own safety, and therefore students are also going to be more careful.
And so for now, the hope is that campuses will continue to have the presence of their students. But with COVID-19, there are never any guarantees. With Govind and Nandakumar, Maya Sharma in Bengaluru for NDTV.
In Nagaland's Oting village, where 12 civilians were killed in a Bosch army operation, grief has many faces. A woman widowed just 12 days after her wedding, a father battling cancer, a mother who thought her sons would look after her in her old age. Everything lost within a few moments on Saturday when 12 villagers were killed in the army ambush gone horribly wrong.
A final farewell for the 12 young men, all innocent civilians who were shot dead in the botched army ambush on Saturday by soldiers of the elite para-special forces of the army. Monglong was married to Hokup just 2 weeks back. Her husband is now dead, one of the 12 villagers who were shot dead when they were mistaken for militants who the army special forces were tracking. Nagamlem is another widow in Oting. She was married just a year back and has a 2-month-old baby. Her husband, Langtung, was killed. A few houses away, Chemwang, a cancer patient, doesn't know who will help him now. His son, Shomwang, bought the pickup truck which was attacked by army soldiers in the ambush. He used to earn a living transporting villagers from the nearby coal mine in Tiru where they worked.
Aro amilaga sokra enaga morai dia nimido amido bisi monduk lagse etia ki koribo na kinaga thakibo na amido enaga oposta de ase ki koribole bi mon nai phamna te eku nai moi pagla nesena moi do enaga hoi jaise.
For Nagunbet, the mother of 2 men who were attacked, every moment is torture. Both of her boys were on the pickup truck. Thawang was killed. Her other son is battling for his life in the intensive care unit. with bullet injuries. The funeral of all 12 men was attended by the Nagaland Chief Minister, whose cabinet is now writing to the centre to repeal the controversial Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which grants these soldiers immunity from prosecution. But for the families of those who have lost so much, any change in this law, which has been resisted for years, will be far too little and far too late. With Manno Wang now in Oting village, Nagaland, and Ratnadeep Chaudhary in Guwahati, Vishnu Shom for NDTV.
All right, news now from the election ground in Uttar Pradesh, and Samajwadi Party Chief Akhilesh Yadav, ally Jayant Chaudhary at his side, berated Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and the ruling BJP on multiple issues as they addressed a rally in Western UP's Meerut. They also made a prediction for the BJP, saying the ruling party could even lose 400 seats.
पूरे देश ने वो जीप देखी जिस जीप में गृह राज्य मंत्री के बेटे बैठे थे, उनके सहयोगी साथी बैठे थे। सरकार ये बताए कि आखिरकार वो जीप में बैठने वाले गुंडे अपराधी थे कि नहीं थे, जिन्होंने किसानों को कुचल करके मार दिया। ये ध्यान हटाने के लिए कह रहे हैं। और भारतीय जनता पार्टी बताए सूची जारी क्यों नहीं कर रही है कि वो जो उत्तर प्रदेश में माफिया उनकी सूची जारी करे, और साथ ही साथ मुख्यमंत्री जी अपनी सूची जारी करें कि उन पे कितने मुकदमे थे जो उन्होंने मुकदमे वापस लिए।
मुझे ये बताइए आप दोनों कि सीट शेयरिंग के बारे में तो अभी तक कोई बात हुई नहीं है। ये नहीं पता है कि आप कितनी सीटों पे लड़ेंगे, आप कितने क्या पता, हमारा आपस में तय हो। अच्छा तय है 403 पे लड़ेंगे, 403।
देखिए ये कोई बड़ा इशू नहीं है, हम दोनों की बातचीत हो चुकी है। दोनों दलों में बहुत सी सहमति है कि जिसमें सीटों के बंटवारे को लेकर के कोई ऐसी बात बड़ी नहीं है।
देखिए बीजेपी कहती है अब की 350 पार, अब की इतना पार उतना पार, आपकी क्या है, आपका कैलकुलेशन क्या है?
देखिए मैंने पहले दिन का और आज भी कह रहा हूं, मैं जो नाराजगी है, जो गुस्सा जनता के अंदर है, किसान नौजवानों के अंदर, व्यापारियों के अंदर, और जिस तरीके से कोविड की मिसमैनेजमेंट देखा, हो सकता है 400 सीटें भी उत्तर प्रदेश में भारतीय जनता पार्टी हार जाए। अगर खदेड़ा का नारा वहां दिया गया है तो पश्चिम में आते आते भारतीय जनता पार्टी का सूरज भी डूबने का काम होगा।
क्या मैं, अगर आप लोग जीत जाते हैं तो मुख्यमंत्री और उप मुख्यमंत्री की ओर देख रहा हूं, पहले आपसे जानना।
मेरी ऐसी कोई बात नहीं हुई, ना कोई इच्छा। हम चाहते सरकार बने, और सरकार होगी नौजवानों की, किसानों की।
देखिए ये लोकतंत्र में नई एक्सरसाइजेज है, नई तरह की परंपरा बनी है, जहां पर कई डिप्टी सीएम बनाए गए। तेलंगाना में देखिए क्या हुआ है कि कितने डिप्टी सीएम हैं। तो ये हम लोगों पर छोड़ दो कि भविष्य में हम दोनों को क्या करना है।
Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut met with Congress leader Rahul Gandhi on Tuesday evening and later said there cannot be an opposition front without the Congress, a big message aimed at Mamata Banerjee after her "What UPA" taunt. Asked whether opposition parties should sit together to discuss strategy for 2024, Mr. Raut said, "I have asked Rahul Gandhi to take the lead on that."
हमने ये पहले से कहा है कि अगर कोई एक फ्रंट बनता है अपोजिशन का तो कांग्रेस के बिना वो संभव नहीं है। लेकिन वो उस बारे में जरूर चर्चा हुई है। राहुल गांधी मुंबई में आने वाले हैं जल्दी ही, एक प्रोग्राम भी उनका बन रहा है। कांग्रेस के सिवा यूपीए नहीं बन सकती। अगर कोई इस प्रकार से अलग फ्रंट बना गया तो कांग्रेस की लीडरशिप में दूसरा फ्रंट तो काम करेगा ही ना। उनके साथ भी बहुत से पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, रीजनल पार्टी आज भी कांग्रेस के साथ है, तो तीन फ्रंट क्या करेंगे अपोजिशन के।
Right-wing group Bajrang Dal, along with hundreds of locals, were seen barging into a school in Madhya Pradesh, throwing stones at the building on Monday, claiming religious conversion of students by the Christian Missionary Institution. Now, the violence took place as Class 12 students of the exam were sitting for the mathematics exam.
Chaos at St. Joseph's School in the town of Ganj Basoda, 100 kilometers from Bhopal. As a Bajrang Dal mob along with a massive crowd unleashed havoc, they pelted stones, broke the chairs and pots and chanted Jai Shri Ram slogans. Inside the school run by the Bhopal-based Malabar Missionary Society of Assisi province, 14 students were giving their exams and had a narrow escape. But the saffron groups were unfazed, sticking to the allegation of religious conversion.
अगर सेंट जोसेफ स्कूल भी अगर धर्मांतरण में लिप्त है तो हम ये चाहेंगे कि ये बिल्डिंग की जगह खाली मैदान दिखे.
The school denied the claims of religious conversion, claiming that none of the names mentioned in the complaint by the members of the Shri Maharana Rajput Samiti, the Ahirwar Samaj and the Kayas Samaj of Ganj Basoda to the Vidisha collector alleging an incident of religious conversion in the school on the 31st of October, in which they said that 8 school children of other faiths were allegedly converted, matches with any of the students.
हिंदू धर्म का 8 बच्चों को ईसाई बना दिया. वो लोग पत्र में लिखा गया है, वो बच्चों का नाम, वो बच्चे का कोई इधर ही नहीं पड़ता है.
Police said 4 people have been arrested in connection with the incident, while CCTV footage is being checked to find the other accused.
50 से 60 लोगों के ऊपर मामला दर्ज किया गया है, लेकिन 4 लोगों की गिरफ्तारी हो चुकी है.
Home Minister said that they will ensure such incidents won't be repeated.
उसका प्रकार और स्वरूप थोड़ा भिन्न है विदेशी फंडिंग से, और पुनरावृत्ति न हो इसकी चिंता की जा रही है.
Only 4 weeks ago, Hindutva mobs had stormed the sets of a streaming series being filmed by Prakash Jha in Bhopal. The Congress claimed the government has lost control of law and order.
मध्य प्रदेश में जंगल राज जैसे हालात हैं. भारतीय जनता पार्टी सरकार में असामाजिक तत्वों का बोलबाला हो गया है.
The NCPCR had recently written to the Vidisha collector to conduct a probe into the alleged religious conversion of 8 students. But the question is, who gave the authority to saffron groups to barge inside the school premises, vandalize the school property, that too during the exam? With Naved in Vidisha and camera person Rizwan Khan in Bhopal and Anurag Dwari for NDTV.
And we discussed the mob attack on the school in Madhya Pradesh and on LRC last night. Take a look.
Mahesh Verma, the BJP leader, joins us, as does Ami-Ben Yagnik, the Rajya Sabha MP of the Congress. Mr. Verma, you know, October 2021, Uttarakhand, there was an attack on a church in Roorkee which was vandalized. Uttar Pradesh in 2021, Christian nuns were attacked by Hindutva vigilantes. In Madhya Pradesh in October 2021, a Christian school was served an ultimatum by the Bajrang Dal to install an idol of Saraswati, and now this particular school in Vidisha and Madhya Pradesh. What is happening?
इसमें आपने छत्तीसगढ़, महाराष्ट्र और जो कांग्रेस रूलिंग स्टेट है उसका भी नाम लेना चाहिए. उन आंकड़ों और डाटों को रख के बात करके, और समझना चाहिए कि आखिर में जो ये घटनाएं घटती हैं तो उसमें बीजेपी या बीजेपी सरकार को ही बदनाम करने की क्यों कोशिश की जाती है. यहाँ पे
बीजेपी मैंने बीजेपी का कोई नाम नहीं लिया. मैं सिर्फ ये कह रहा हूँ कि ये 4 घटना है. मैंने आपको एक उदाहरण दिया है और हम एक स्पेसिफिक केस के बारे में मैं कह रहे हैं. ये बीजेपी वर्सेस कांग्रेस क्यों बना रहे हैं आप?
नहीं, जैसे
आप इसको क्रिटिसाइज क्यों नहीं कर रहे? आप ये क्यों नहीं कह रहे कि ये नहीं होना चाहिए, कि वहां बच्चे पढ़ रहे थे, उनको शायद चोट लग सकता था, और ऐसे एक स्कूल के खिलाफ ये हादसा नहीं होना चाहिए था? और ये बीजेपी छत्तीसगढ़, उत्तर प्रदेश में सिर्फ जिन जगह में ये अटैक्स हो चुके हैं लास्ट 2 महीने में, मैंने सिर्फ उनका नाम दिया. मैं कोई बीजेपी वर्सेस कांग्रेस या और कोई पार्टी के बारे में नहीं पूछा आपसे.
हाँ, नहीं, मैं आपको ये कहना चाहता हूं कि जो आप बात और जो सवाल आप उठा रहे हैं
जी,
वो किसी भी सभ्य समाज में उसकी कोई जगह नहीं है.
Correct.
और कोई भी सरकार और कोई भी पार्टी इस तरह की चीजों को ना बर्दाश्त करेगी, ना इस तरह से कोई गवर्नेंस देने की कोशिश करेगी। जैसे अभी आज बिशप ने कहा कि एंटी सोशल एलिमेंट्स जो है यहाँ थे, कुछ लोगों के वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट थे, और सरकार ने जिस तत्परता के साथ वहां एक्शन लिया, 6 से ज्यादा लोगों को अरेस्ट किया, 7 से 8 ऊपर आईपीसी की धाराओं के तहत जो है 50 लोगों को बुक किया, तो ये अपने आप में दर्शाता है कि सरकार जो है किसी भी अपनी नागरिक के प्रति या किसी भी तरह का कोई इंस्टीट्यूशन चल रहा है उसको लेकर कोई भी अगर आदमी कानून हाथ लेता है तो उसको हर हाल में उसके ऊपर कार्रवाई करेगी।
Okay. Amibin Yagnik, is that a satisfactory response that action is being taken in Madhya Pradesh?
No. I think Vishnu, the issue is there are several issues here. First, it's a law and order situation. You can see the crowds in the visuals, how they collected and how they're attacking a school. You can imagine the students inside the school building. You are putting fear in the students, even in the administration and everywhere. So why is the government not aware of these situations, and why is not taking a stern step? I am going one step further. If these incidents are happening in several states, and if the government failure is there in taking stock of the situation and then follow-up action on maintaining law and order, then I think one word from the Honorable Prime Minister that this should not be happening in the country. Why is it happening, and why stricter steps are not being taken? I think it would make a lot of difference. We are a civilized society. We are moving in the 21st century ahead. We are talking of giving education to our children. We want good atmosphere. We want safe environment for our students. And look at the way the law and order situation is. Any government where the state government is not able to take steps, I think the central government has to take a very serious note of this and take steps to see that children study in a safe environment, and these rowdies and these anti-social elements who flock the roads and the streets, they should be put to stern action.
Mahesh ji, one final question to you. ये large scale conversions के बारे में जब लोग कह रहे हैं, ये statistically और ये इसका evidence क्या है?
देखिए विष्णु जी, इसमें क्या सच्चाई है और इसके लिए ऑलरेडी कानून है। जैसे आर्च बिशप ने भी कहा कि इस तरह के कोई भी कन्वर्जन होते हैं तो कोई भी आदमी कानून अपने हाथ में थोड़ी लेगा
जी,
कहीं अटैक थोड़ी कर देगा।
पर ये लार्ज स्केल कन्वर्जन्स हो रहे हैं या नहीं हो रहे? क्योंकि स्टैटिस्टिकली ये इसका डेटा कहाँ है कि लार्ज स्केल कन्वर्जन की
मैं कन्वर्जन के बारे में बात इसलिए नहीं करूंगा कि कन्वर्जन के लिए कानून है। अगर कोई ऐसा काम करता है तो निश्चित रूप से वो इलीगल है। अब बात ये रही कि जो घटना घटी है उस घटना को लेकर जो चिंता करनी चाहिए वो राज्य सरकार ने करी। दूसरी बात, जब ये छत्तीसगढ़ में घटना घटी और कुछ ही दिन पहले की बात है, जब उसमें जनवरी की ये बात है 2021 में, और राज्यसभा में जो अपने वेणुगोपाल जी हैं, जब सेंट्रल सरकार ने उस पर रिपोर्ट तलब की तो उसके ऊपर इतने हाय तोबे मचाए गए और ये कहा गया कि ये क्या कर रही है केंद्र सरकार। तो इस तरह की जो सोच है, समझ है, और ये जो इसको लेकर जिस तरह से राजनीति करने की कोशिश की जाती है, यही अपने आप में गलत है और इसको सबसे पहले रोकना चाहिए। अगर कोई भी व्यक्ति, कोई भी सिटीजन उसके किसी राइट्स पे या उसके किसी फ्रीडम पे अटैक हुआ है तो उसके लेकर जो कानूनी कार्रवाई है वो हुई या नहीं हुई है, ये देखने वाली बात है। मध्य प्रदेश सरकार ने तत्कालिक रूप से वहां पे 6 से ज्यादा आईपीसी की धारा लगा के 6 से ज्यादा लोगों को जो है अरेस्ट किया है।
Okay, all right. Last word, Amibin Yagnik. Don't make this a political issue. It needs to be looked at only from a law and order perspective. Do you believe that that's a simplistic way of looking at it?
No, these are repeated incidents that are happening, and there are several issues that come in it. Maybe the conversion issue, somewhere you have seen mob lynching, but the crowds are not having any fear of the law. And those governments who come out and praise that they have a very good governance model, I think they should be hauled up by the central government and they should be asked questions. They are responsible to see that the society functions in a safe way. These are happening day in and day out. You may give any reason for that. There might be people who would say that, well, these are polarization attempts, but well, we have to look into it. And I think a day will come when the Honorable Courts will have to take some suo moto notice of all these issues.
Let's now get you the latest on the new Omicron variant. A top WHO official has said that Omicron does not appear to cause more severe disease than previous variants and is highly unlikely to fully dodge the vaccine protections, though the final word on that is still awaited. Well, to talk more about the new variant and what we know so far, we're now joined by Dr. Ashish Jha, Dean Brown University School of Public Health. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, it's been a few days since we learned of this new variant Omicron. Given what we know so far, what is your view?
You know, I'm still pretty concerned about the state of the Omicron variant. And let me tell you kind of where my concerns are. There is some good news here. There's some preliminary data that maybe the disease is milder than with Delta for vaccinated people who have breakthrough infections or people who've been previously infected. Maybe they will not get as sick. That we don't know that for sure. Let's hope that is true. If that is true, that will, of course, help a lot. That said, it is very, very contagious. It is much more contagious than Delta, which was already so contagious. And so what I think many of us are worried about right now is we're going to see a very large wave of Omicron induced kind of infections across much of the world in the next couple of months. That's the concern. Even if it's mild, it's still going to mean that a lot of people are going to end up getting sick. So we have to be very careful here.
All right, Dr. Jha, the fact that it can spread rapidly is very concerning. And while the news that it's not causing severe disease does provide some comfort, it's anecdotal. Is it dangerous to fall into a complacency given that?
Yeah, well, what I would say to people is we don't know for sure. And there are a lot of very key questions. So one question is it mild just for people who have been vaccinated or recently infected? Or is it also mild for people who've never been infected or are not vaccinated? That's a really important question. A second important question, is it mild for elderly people? Is it mild for people who have other chronic diseases? Most of the people who have identified so far tend to be younger, healthier people. And so we don't really know how well it does or how people who are older and more chronically ill do with Omicron. These are all critical issues that we have to sort out. And then last point is imagine that it's half as serious as Delta, that maybe only half as many people would get hospitalized. If you have a large wave, you'll still end up having a lot of people get very sick. So we still have to prepare. It's not like it's completely going to have no negative effects at all. Even in the best case scenario, I think we have to really be careful about what is going to come from this variant.
And what we do know so far is that the reinfection rate is higher with this particular variant that the WHO has said, and this indicates also that it can evade vaccines.
Yeah, all the evidence we have right now, and again, very preliminary, suggests that this variant is going to break through from vaccines and from prior infections. Doesn't mean that you're going to get full-blown kind of COVID, but it does mean that you are still probably much higher likelihood of getting infected than with Delta.
And what of the, these claims that are being made by some that this particular variant has picked up a piece of the common cold virus, that's being said a lot. Just explain that to us.
Yeah, people are trying to understand the genetics of this virus. It's very confusing because it doesn't look like Delta or Alpha or one of the others. It looks very different. So one of the theories that has been proposed, it's just a theory, is that maybe it picked up some genetic material of one of the other coronaviruses that causes a common cold that people get all the time. And maybe that is causing it to become a bit more contagious, but it's also maybe causing it to be milder. This is a theory that has been advanced by a small number of people. No one yet feels comfortable stating that. It might turn out to be the case. It may very well turn out not to be the case.
And given what we know so far, how do you think the governments should respond to this variant?
Yeah, so I would say a few things. First, every single variant has turned out to be about equally severe. So assuming that Omicron will end up being very, very mild is a dangerous assumption, because if we are wrong, then the cost is quite catastrophic. So first and foremost, you should plan for a scenario where Omicron is not mild. Of course, if it turns out to be mild, great. But we should not plan for that. We should not assume that the evidence is not that clear yet. That means to me that really making sure that the most vulnerable people are vaccinated. Now, I think India has done a phenomenal job on vaccinations, right? 130 crore vaccines distributed, given to people. Vast majority of adults have gotten at least one shot. But I think there's some critical things. So healthcare workers, who were among some of the earliest people to get vaccinated and fully vaccinated, probably should be getting their third shot at this point. Because if there is a large wave, it's going to be the healthcare workers that are going to be on the front lines taking care of sick people. They need to be better protected. So I would definitely I would do that. I would think about India has largely focused on adults, has not started vaccinating children. I would think about lowering the age down from 18 to 15 or 12, because that will also add more immunity to the population and will protect those children as well. Third is, of course, just getting ready, making sure you have enough hospital capacity, because again, it may turn out that this is not that severe. That would be great, better to be prepared. I am worried that all of the talk of this is mild, if it turns out not to be mild, will catch everybody off guard and get us all into trouble. I would rather be over-prepared and it turn out to be fine than to be under-prepared and this turn out to be something much more serious.
Well, we are still waiting for vaccines for teenagers, but in India it's also sparked a huge demand for boosters, which you just spoke about. Many are also talking about getting access to different vaccines, more vaccines, and it does seem now that mixing of vaccines does provide better protection.
Yeah, there is very good evidence that mixing vaccines is certainly very safe. It may provide better protection. There's no harm in it, but I certainly think we should consider that. India is starting to make Novavax, the vaccine Serum Institute is. That's a very, very high quality vaccine. Look, India, again, is doing a very good job right now, administering 50, 60 lakh vaccines a day. I mean, just amazing progress. Probably one of the most impressive in the world. I understand the need to continue vaccinating more adults. I think high-risk people who are elderly, people who are healthcare workers, I would actually at this point really start thinking about giving them boosters, because I do think that they are going to be vulnerable. Even if this is a mild wave, they're going to be vulnerable because elderly people are always vulnerable and healthcare workers are going to face so many of these infections, that I would move relatively quickly towards giving those groups, not everybody, but those groups boosters up front.
And finally, Dr. Jha, so far we have some, 23 odd cases of Omicron in India, one even in a doctor who hasn't traveled abroad. So what does this mean about the actual numbers of the variant here? Do you think it's, already here in India?
I think it's here. I think it's here in India. I think it's here in the United States. I think it's here in many, many countries. Countries that are identifying them are actually identifying them because they're doing a good job with sequencing and identifying those cases. I would not be surprised if in the weeks ahead we see hundreds and hundreds of cases, if not thousands of cases. I expect community transmission has already started or will very, very soon. This is what is happening in every place where Omicron is, and no reason to think India is going to be different.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jha, for speaking to us here at NDTV. With that, time for us to slip into a short break. We'll get you more news on the other side. Now, the other big story today, the farmers' agitation just may be called off today after over a year of the agitation. The Samyukt Kisan Morcha could take the final call to withdraw the agitation against the central government's 3 farm laws, which have anyway been repealed now. A final decision is expected in the afternoon. This morning, a 5-member team of the farm leaders will be meeting at 10:30, and they will finalize the draft for the compromise with the government. Well, let's go across now to Meher, who joins us from the Shingu border. That is where this meeting will take place. Meher, the afternoon meeting will be at 2 p.m. and that's when the final decision perhaps will be announced. Tell us, what are the farmers now saying? Are they now in a mood to call off the agitation?
So Gargi, I'm right now at the Singhu border. There is going to be a meeting here at 2 p.m. to discuss the government's proposal. The government has accepted in part most of their remaining demands. There is also an emergency meeting that will start at 10:30 a.m. in Delhi. So the government has actually accepted in part most of the demands. They say on MSP they will create a committee to that will discuss the guarantee of MSP. A lot of the farmers here are actually protesting at Singhu border specifically for MSP. They say MSP is the most important thing. So the government has said that they will set up a committee that will discuss this proposal, and the farmer unions actually say that they only want Sanyukt Kisan Morcha representatives to be part of this committee on MSP, because as we know earlier there have been farmer groups who've come out in support of the three laws. The SKM does not want any of those farmers to have a voice in this committee. They only want farmers who oppose the bills and were protesting at Delhi's borders. The farmers also want clarity on compensation. The government has said that UP and Haryana will give compensation along the lines of the Punjab government. The Punjab government announced 5 lakh compensation to all the farmers, their families who died at the Delhi's borders. But the SKM wants more clarity on how exactly this will happen. They want it to happen for the Punjab and Haryana government along similar lines. So I'm going to try and speak to them. That will give us an idea about how challenging it may be for them to actually move this protest away from Delhi's borders, because MSP guarantee is a very contentious issue. Many farmers feel very strongly about it and may not be satisfied with just a committee being formed. कि ये अभी जो प्रपोजल आया है कि एमएसपी गारंटी पर एक कमेटी बनाई जाएंगी और इस पे सिर्फ संयुक्त किसान मोर्चा के लोग होंगे शामिल इस मीटिंग. सो आप इस पर सहमति करेंगे? आप यहाँ से जाएंगे अगर एक कमेटी फॉर्म हो?
नहीं, हम संयुक्त मोर्चे का सम्मान करते हैं, उनके साथ ही हम काम करते आए हैं, कमेटी का भी सम्मान करते हैं. लेकिन कमेटी अगर आंदोलन रहते हुए काम करती है, हम कहीं नहीं जाएंगे. आंदोलन यहाँ पूरा सेटअप जो बना हुआ है, यहाँ रहते हुए कमेटी काम करती है तो हम कमेटी के साथ हैं. लेकिन अगर वो कमेटी कहती है कि आंदोलन यहाँ से जाए या बीजेपी सरकार कहते हैं आंदोलन जाए कि हम कमेटी से बाद में बात करेंगे, तो हम कमेटी से असहमत हैं, कमेटी से सहमत नहीं हम.
सर, आप एमएसपी के बारे में थोड़ा समझा सकते हैं? ये जो इशू है आप इतना स्ट्रांगली क्यों?
जो एमएसपी है वो कम से कम लागत मूल्य है. जो हमारा फसल पर खर्चा आता है वो है, उसमें हमारा लाभ कोई नहीं है. वो सिर्फ एक हमारा जो फसल पर लागत मूल्य कम से कम रेट है वो. इसलिए वो तो हमारा कानूनी अधिकार है, वो तो हमें सरकार को हमें बिना मांगे देनी चाहिए. वो भीख थोड़ी मांग रहे हैं, हम अपना हक मांग रहे हैं. जो हम फसल पर मेहनत करते हैं, जो हमारे खर्चे आते हैं वो है.
आज आपने ये जो ये पहन रखे हैं, इसका मतलब क्या हो?
इसका मतलब ये है कि हमें अभी भी आज़ाद नहीं है. शीर भगत ने जो नारा दिया था कि हमारे विचार अभी भी गुलाम है, आज भी हम गुलाम हैं. गुलाम है तो तभी तो 1 साल तो 12-13 दिन हो गए जहाँ रोड पर बैठे हुए हैं. अगर हम आज़ाद होते तो हमारी बात सुन ली जाती, तो जल्दी से हमें 1-2 महीने में बेच दिया जाता.
सर, आप खेती करते हैं?
बिल्कुल. देखिए, एमएसपी की जो मांग है ना, एमएसपी के ऊपर बड़े बड़े राजनीतिज्ञ, बड़ी बड़ी राजनीतिक पार्टियां लंबे समय से बहस चलती आई है और बड़ी बड़ी कमेटियां बनी है. यदि इस बार भी आंदोलन के चलते हुए किसान ये विश्वास कर ले कि जो कमेटियां पहले बनी थी और अब भी उस पर विचार करने की ज़रूरत है एमएसपी के ऊपर, तो मेरे हिसाब से उसको ठंडे बिस्तर में गिरने वाली बात है. एमएसपी के ऊपर गारंटी कानून ही किसान को बचाएगा.
So Gargi, that gives you an idea. Although there is discussion going on with the government, just a committee on MSP might not be the end of the road. They want a full law, and only then, this is a section of the farmers who feel very strongly and won't leave until a law is also formed. So that gives you an idea of the challenges ahead for these talks.
All right, Meher, thanks so much for getting us those voices. So a core meeting will take place at 10:30 and then the larger meeting at 2 p.m. News coming in from Jammu and Kashmir, and an encounter has started in Shopian. Police and security forces are on the job. Let's go across to Nazir for more. Nazir, what are the details?
Well, for the last 3 hours, the operation is underway at Chak Chole village in Shopian district, where it is believed that 2 or 3 militants are hiding. For the last 3 hours, there have been gunshots heard, but there is no update if any militant has been killed. That is, the police has only so far, put a tweet that encounter has started in Chak Chole village, and the police and security force are on the job. This is part of the series of operations which have been launched by the security forces in last few months. They have rather intensified operations against militants, and 150 militants have been killed this year. That's almost the same number which have been killed last year, and it is like a routine. But the fact is that this operation has been started in this area. Gunshots have been heard, but so far no update if any militant has been killed or captured in this operation.
All right, Nazir, thanks so much for joining us with those details on an anti-terror operation there in Jammu and Kashmir in Shopian. In other news now, a special NIA court in Mumbai will decide today on the bail conditions for activist Sudha Bhardwaj, who has been in jail since August 2018 in connection with the Bhima Koregaon Algar Parishad case. 60-year-old Bhardwaj was granted a default bail by the Bombay High Court on the 1st of December, which was based on a finding that the additional sessions court in Pune, which had extended the time for investigation in the case beyond 90 days, was not competent to do so as it was not notified as a special court under Section 22 of the NIA Act. Now, the High Court had directed her to be produced before the trial court on the 8th of December, that's today, to complete the bail formalities. The NIA went to the Supreme Court to deny this bail. However, the Supreme Court did not interfere in the matter.
Well, after 3 years of incarceration, Sudha Bhardwaj will finally be granted bail. This after the Supreme Court refused to interfere with the Bombay High Court's order that gave her default bail. Now, why did the Bombay High Court give her default bail? Because her case had been decided by a court that was not competent to deal with the case, which had not been designated as a special NIA court under the NIA Act. So this is, of course, something that her lawyers argued in the Bombay High Court, which means that her case was not before the right court that extended her custody, and that's why she's been granted default bail by the Bombay High Court. The NIA went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court on yesterday, refused to interfere with the Bombay High Court's orders. The Bombay High Court had ordered that today Sudha Bhardwaj be produced before the trial court, the special NIA court, which will decide on the conditions of a bail. Now, we expect these conditions to be decided at around noon because the court starts functioning only from 11 o'clock and then thereafter it'll take some time to process the orders. But yes, by evening we could see Sudha Bhardwaj walk out of the Baikala jail, which is of course where she's been housed. This is a women's jail, but also the others who had applied for default bail, their plea was turned down by the Bombay High Court. And this has been a case where there's been a lot of attention on questions over the evidence that's been produced by the NIA in this case, whether the evidence was planted according to forensic agencies that study material. And then of course there's the whole question of the application of UAPA on activists who work and may have taken a stance against the government. So all of these questions have been there around this case. Sudha Bhardwaj has spent more than 3 years in jail. She was arrested in August 2018. And of course, finally after 3 years, she will be walking out of jail, provided those bail orders that are likely to be announced, the conditions that are likely to be announced, and following which the order will be passed. Once that is processed, she will walk out of the Baikala jail. One expects the process to be completed by today, but like we've seen in other cases, sometimes that process can take time, and jail rules are very strict, so they function according to a time. So it could be today, but also it could spill over to tomorrow.
In other news now, Maharashtra has reported 10 cases of the Omicron variant, and the state is putting in place systems to ensure there are no further restrictions or shutdowns as a result of the new variant. Now, Cabinet Minister Aditya Thackeray has written to the Union Health Minister with 3 suggestions for protection. Saurabh Gupta reports.
So I've written to the Union Health Minister on 3 points. One is, of course, to reduce the minimum vaccination age to 15 from 18. This will help us better protect college-going students and 10th standard kids. The other thing is, of course, whoever feels safe in terms of frontline workers and healthcare workers to get the 3rd dose, And for Mumbai, if the gap between the two doses can be reduced to 4 weeks, it will be better, because by 14th or 15th of Jan, we would have fully vaccinated entire population.
A list of demands from Maharashtra, worst hit by COVID and now with the most number of Omicron cases. Reducing age for eligibility of vaccines, reducing gap between doses, and a booster dose for frontline and healthcare workers is among the suggestions. The Indian Medical Association, in a note on the Omicron variant, says that children are getting infected in South Africa and ICU admissions are rising. Possibility of enhanced infection in the pediatric age group is inevitable, says the IMA. And it also asks the government to expedite vaccination of 12 to 18-year-old children to protect them. Doctors have said there's a shortage of kits which usually detect Omicron quickly before it's confirmed days later by genome sequencing.
अभी टेस्टिंग बहुत कम हो गया है. ओमाइक्रॉन का जो डायग्नोसिस है वो प्राइमरी डायग्नोसिस आरटी-पीसीआर में ही होता है, लेकिन आरटी-पीसीआर टेस्ट की जो टेस्टिंग की बहुत ही कमी है, क्योंकि जब लॉकडाउन कम होने के बाद, दूसरी लहर कम होने के बाद टेस्टिंग की जो फैसिलिटीज़ है वो काफ़ी जगह पर बहुत ही कम पाई जाती है. हॉस्पिटल के बेड्स जो है वो दूसरी लहर के तुलना में कम से कम 3 गुना तो बढ़ाने चाहिए.
On Monday evening, the Chief Minister met the state's COVID task force. Sources have told NDTV that the task force suggested delaying the reopening of schools for all grades. The task force has not yet recommended any more curbs, but it is monitoring the situation closely. The state wants to avoid closures and restrictions and is preparing for a surge in the number of patients. According to experts, the unvaccinated population, the below 18 age group, is most susceptible to the Omicron variant or any other wave or variant of the coronavirus, which is why there is a focus on bringing down the vaccination age and also including pediatric wards at the dedicated COVID hospitals. In Mumbai with camera person Praveen G. Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.